Hey everybody, Dr. G here. It's time to operate. Today we're going to dissect Cheap Sunglasses by ZZ Top. As with other songs I've dissected, there's a secret that you need to know in order to play it correctly. And the secret in this case is open G tuning, also called Spanish tuning. The low E becomes a D, and you have G, D, G again, B, D, to give you a G chord. All right, let's take a look at the different riffs in this song. We'll start with the one that starts off the song. First, put your index finger across the G, B, and E strings on the 2nd fret and slide up to the 3rd. Sometimes he picks those notes, other times he strums them, and I like to strum it upward. Next, I'll show you the low notes that follow in the second half of that riff. Remember, the low string is tuned down to D because this is open G tuning. So it's open 3-5 and then 3-5 on the A string. Now combine those notes with the open D string and then the open G string. You switch from the D string to the G string when you switch to low notes to the A string, the last 2 notes. So it's like this. Open D string first. So that whole riff again slowly is, or more like the record. Let's look at the second riff in the song, and we'll focus on the low notes. The 3rd and 4th low notes are on the upbeat, so it goes. Then when you combine that with the open D and G strings, you get. Or more like the record. Now we're going to cover the chords that are behind the solos. He's only playing the D, G, and B strings for every one of these chords. He starts with his index finger across the 3rd fret and then adds on the middle finger on the 4th fret, B string, ring finger on the 5th fret, D string, to get this hammer-on. He then hits that chord, I'm plucking the notes twice, like this, real short. And then he does a pull-off with these fingers and hits the 3rd fret D string, which is an F note, before he puts those notes back on, like this. That gives you something like this. And he does a similar pattern, starting on B flat and going down to A flat, like this. He then comes back up to the original 2 chords. Then he goes up 2 frets to play, again, it's like a minor 7th configuration. Then he changes it to a major chord by putting his ring finger down across the D, G, and B strings on the 7th fret. Let's look at that short fill in between the verses. He does it with some kind of special effect live, but the notes are C, C, C an octave lower, low G, C high, C low, like this. Okay, there's another little riff that he uses before each solo. Put your index finger on the G, B, and E strings at the 10th fret. Sometimes he plucks this, sometimes he strums it. But you hit the first one, let it ring, and then go down to the 9th fret. If you watch live recordings of ZZ Top playing Cheap Sunglasses, you'll see that he actually plays it in standard tuning, which is different than the studio recording, which was done in open G tuning. Because of this, certain notes are left out. For example, in the beginning of the very first riff, he plays this. Sounds very close, but it's not what is actually on the studio recording, because you have to include the high E string, which you can do when it's in G tuning, to get this. You hear this? That's the difference. Also on this riff, live, he just plays two strings, the G and B strings. But on the studio recording in open G tuning, he plays all three strings, the G, B, and E, to give you. There are a number of famous artists who have used open tunings, like open E and open G, on studio recordings, but do not use those tunings on live recordings. It may be because they don't want to be bothered switching back and forth between standard tuned guitars and open tuned guitars on stage, or believe it or not, sometimes they just don't want you to know exactly how they played it on the studio recording. In addition, if you compare the live recordings to the studio recording, you'll notice that all of the low D notes are missing on the live recordings because they are not done in open G tuning. So, in summary, the song is done in open G tuning on the studio recording, and that's what I'm teaching you. Let's take a look at the main riff one more time. Well, I hope you enjoyed the dissection of Cheap Sunglasses by ZZ Top. Stay tuned to Guitar Riffs Played Right for the dissection of additional famous songs.